And I was like, you know what? I can do this. because why not? Why can't you build buy two plots of land, stitch them together, go for planning, develop 5 houses, do option agreements, do failed planning agreements, do vendor finance. Vendor finance. There was so much stuff that was in this deal. A bridging company's pulling out at the last minute. 30 grand to raise in 24 hours. That was fun. All to get this done. And I thought, why can't I do that? So that's what I did, and it was horrific.
Welcome to the How to Raise Money podcast for anyone who wants to raise other people's money for a business or property venture. Right now, there has never been more money on the planet, and there has never been more opportunity. This podcast will help you put the two together. So, if you need money for your business or property proposals from banks, lenders, angels, whales or dragons, this is the podcast for you.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the How to Raise Money podcast. My name is Ray McLennan.
And he's with me, Nigel T. Best. Ray, how are you doing? Virtual Ray. Are you real? Can you just, slap yourself around the face? Just make sure you're real.
There we go. Yes.
There you go. All right.
And
he's
we're
real.
recording this in audio, but in video. So it will be on, there'll be a video channel there as well. And the reason we've got such a gap between the last one we did and this one is Nigel lives in a small Irish village called Ballybacca Beyond, where they don't have any Wi-Fi of any description. But guess what? Tell us about it, Nigel.
Do you know what, Ray? I cannot believe how good the 21st century is. It's a remarkable place. It's just wonderful. I was getting, up until this, we were trying to do this when I was struggling to get half a meg. This morning, I am rocking and rolling on about 700 megs.
What the heck?
Yeah. Fiber to the premises, baby. Fiber to the premises.
So, well, we have a guest with us today. So the video people are saying, who's that guy there? The guy we're talking today to is Craig Phillips. Hi, Craig.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, morning, Craig.
Morning.
We're all good. Now, we brought Craig on to interview because Craig has gone through a bit of a traumatic time raising money for some of his property developments, because we're obviously in the middle of this pandemic and all the repercussions that is throwing up. So Craig I've known for a few years. He's been in property development for only a few years, not decades. And we'd like to hear your story. So, Craig, over to you. Tell us how it all began.
Yeah. Good morning, gents. First of all, thanks for having me on, although not thanks at 8 o'clock in the morning. What's that about?
What do you mean 8 o'clock in the morning? This is 11:30.
Of course it is. Yeah. No, but yeah, like you said, Ray, I've known you for a few years, and you've seen me where I started and where I currently am, and obviously, hopefully, where I aim to be in a few years' time. So I initially, just going back to the very beginning, I initially started in the Royal Navy. I was in the Navy for 10 years, and I did reasonably well in that. I went around the world, had a great time. I think I did anyway. People told me that I've had a great time, and the fridge magnets from places I can't even remember tell me that I had a great time. And then I left there when I was offered a job by the Americans as a consultant, doing what I was previously doing in the Navy. I did that for 10 years. Hang on, I'm getting all kinds of warnings. Cancel.
No, right, yeah. Consultant.
Yeah,
no, I was just thinking how to raise money.
So that went reasonably well. I did that for 10 years. But in the meantime, I got involved in property. I came along to a few events, started dipping my toe into it. And then I was growing my business on the side of my consultancy. But there was a tipping point where, even though I was reasonably well paid as a consultant, it was costing me more money by still being a consultant and not concentrating on my property business. So there was a tipping point that we was able to work with you, Ray, and we were able to get me out of work a little bit earlier than I expected. And that was in May of 2019. I left full-time employment, so not even 3 years into my property journey at that point, and I was able to leave a £90,000 a year job in order to pursue my career. So it was my new career. So that's how I got involved in it, really.
Good. Okay. So
Excellent.
did you manage, so was your property company generating the same amount of salary or income when you left, or what?
No, not at the time. We were able to, well, in fact, Ray, we worked with an investor, and they were able to meet me basically. They'd met me a few times. You'd reintroduced us to each other, and they were able then to work with me and pipeline my future to see where I was going to be, because they could see I was a kind of a person that kind of created kinetic energy. I just created movement where a lot of people kind of don't have that grind element to it. And I'm currently working with that investor. They were able to help me and get me out of work slightly earlier. And now we're just rolling forward and still working with them now. So yeah, it's been really, really life-changing. So it's been good.
Excellent. All right. Okay. So what sort of developments do you do? What did you start doing when you say your property journey? What did that involve?
So I started like everybody does. I was like, how do I make the cheap money fast? So I started doing deal sourcing. And then I realized it was 7,000 hours a week for £12.50. And I was like, what's this? Because I was no good at it. It was ridiculously difficult. And it was hard marrying up deals with investors that were able to deploy funds at that time. And then when you realize as a deal sourcer that you've sourced a deal, you then get paid 17 weeks later because the conveyancing has taken forever. And I was like, I'm not into this. This is just not going to get me where I need to go. And it was at that point where I stumbled across a deal that I was looking at to source onto investors. And I was like, you know what? I can do this. because why not? Why can't you buy two plots of land, stitch them together, go for planning, develop 5 houses, do option agreements, do failed planning agreements, do vendor finance. There was so much stuff that was in this deal. A bridging company's pulling out at the last minute. 30 grand to raise in 24 hours. That was fun. All to get this done. And I thought, why can't I do that? So that's what I did, and it was horrific.
How hard can it be?
It sounds like, yeah, I was going to say, Craig, it sounds like you got the index for all the property strategies out there and then managed to find the one deal that actually used them all in one go. It's good going. It's good going. You got to say that's good going.
Yeah, it was rough. But I mean, a lesson learned. I mean, wow. Some of the stuff that I've learned on there when I'm speaking to people now, and obviously Ray and Nigel, you both know me, so you know I'm not one that's shy for words. An ideal podcast guest sometimes, where you don't have to push a wet noodle uphill. I can actually talk a little bit, but it was infuriating, but incredibly mind opening, because I saw these things, but then I thought that somebody like me could actually go about doing it. So yes, I've got planning that's failed, but I overcome that boundary. Yes, I did a deal where I stitched 2 pieces of land together and I put them all together and bought them as one. It was ridiculously difficult, but I learned so much. So yeah, it's
Craig, to give it a bit of context, from sort of finding that deal until it was all done and the dust had settled and you'd survived it, how long a time span was that?
When's this podcast going out? Because it's still not over.
Okay, so if you're listening to this and the pandemic was 10 years ago, look up Craig and see if he's finished.
No, it'll be finished in, I've got March 2021. That's when it's all done and dusted, sold. I've already sold all the units. It's done and dusted. But yeah.
All right.
When I speak to everybody in property, they always say, oh, you'll have one dodgy one. You'll have one really, really bad one. It would have just helped if I'd made £1 million first and then had it. Not done it when I had £4.50. So,
but someone once told me the best way to look at a bad property deal is it's like a bad haircut. It'll grow out. Now, as you can see, I haven't got any hair left. So, you can read into that what you want.
Mm. Yeah. So I'm interested in the bit there, Craig, where it said how to raise money podcast, obviously. So how did you raise the money for that deal?
It was in pockets, to be honest. To start with, it was just speaking to people in certain communities I was in. And because I did it in small sections, I bought one plot of the land first, and then I did bridging on the second, and I only needed like 20 grand here or 40 grand there. You know, I say only because some people listening, that's a lot of money. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is a lot of money, but not when you're dealing in multi-million pound projects. So it was a matter of borrowing £30,000 off somebody and then saying, I'll pay you back. And then.
Okay. Hang on, Craig. So you've been talking to investors anyway, because you've been trying to source properties and find out who's got money. Were you going back to those people and saying, okay, I've got something here? And were you giving them, I need 30,000 for 3 months, for 6 months, for a year. Here's an interest rate. This is how I'll repay you. Was it like that, or was it a bit more informal?
It was a little bit more informal, to be honest. It was much more about the people I already knew. I said there was investors that I was sourcing deals to, but they were investors that wanted to buy assets, not necessarily lend money to somebody to do something else. So there is different types of investors out there, as we all know. There's people who want certain securities, there's people who want certain interest rates, and it just depends on meeting the right people. So for those initial ones, it was just about people I already knew, and just asking questions and promise them a return.
All right. Was that a double-edged sword? It's people you know. Did you feel in some way more obliged to them, or the obligations were higher? You wanted to deliver a great return for them. Did that put added stress on? How was that compared to, say, a complete stranger, remote? You never meet them. It's very business transactional.
I think, like you said, it's two ways, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to upset somebody that you know, and then you have to run into him should something go wrong. But I try and treat all investors exactly the same. But it is slightly easier sometimes with somebody maybe you haven't met, or you've met once or twice, and is on the other end of an email, rather than somebody you bump into in the middle of town for a coffee, and you've got to explain to them why their 6-month loan is now a 9-month loan. So it's a juggling act, but again, it's understanding that they were in the position to lend you that money, no matter where they are or what they were doing. So you've got to treat them all exactly the same, even if it's a friendship. A mentor of mine always tells me to get it down on paper early, because as soon as it's down on paper and you agree, then if there's a falling out later, then you can always go back to the document. I think a lot of people, when they're doing informal loans, agree something in principle over the coffee, don't have it written down, and then when it comes to falling out later in, they say, you said this, and I was like, well, no, actually I didn't say that. So it's vitally important to get that.
Okay, so
the terms, yeah.
So there's quite a few things in there. The initial amounts of money, let's give people some context. You started talking to someone, you sort of pitched the project to them. How long was it taking to get those chunks of money in? And I'm guessing they were all different, but roughly, was it same day? Was it 6 months of tense negotiations? How was it?
To be honest, the initial ones were quite quick. There were people who had the money in the bank, so it was a matter of just getting a quick loan agreement sorting, and again getting it down on paper and getting them funds in. Normally within about a week, get a solicitor, get a couple of witness signatures. Back in the day when you could actually go and meet people to witness signatures and things. But yeah, so it tends to be about a week or so, and yeah, that's
so that's quite liquid. That's really quite liquid, isn't it?
Yeah.
That ability to keep things going on there. So that started off well. Talk us through. I'm guessing with this project, there's been some ups and downs. So just sort of highlight or hint at a few of the things that can happen when you're trying to raise the next section of money to keep the thing going.
Yeah, there's been lots of ups and downs. Remember that Venga Boys song where it's like up and down? It was just constantly just ups and downs all the way through it. But
thankfully, I don't.
Oh.
I only remember their other mega hits. That's all.
Right. Okay. But no, we that's it.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, Ray's too old for all this. We're more the youthful side, Craig.
I'm slapping my forehead here. Come on.
No, but because this project was done in multiple stages, like I said before, we had to have 2 plots that we put together. We managed to buy one side of it using a little bit of investor finance, and then just going into normal bank lending for the rest of it. And then we came to do the second half of the deal where we stitched them together. We had one investor, and it just took forever. It just took forever to go through planning. And at the beginning, they said, we've got the money at the beginning of planning. And then when we got planning confirmed, I think we had an agreement where on completion of successful planning, we had to exchange within a week or two. I can't remember exactly. It's a long time ago. So then I had funds lined up to do the whole purchase. So I was happy. And then when it came down to it, it was on the 11th of November. It was Remembrance Day. Obviously, it just sticks in my mind because I used to be in the Navy. So, and then I just got a phone call saying, "Oh no, we haven't got the funds anymore." And so that was on the 11th, and on the 13th I had to exchange. But because I'd done both, because the planning permission encompassed both sites together, I had to buy it. Otherwise, I'd lose the other site, which I'd already bought. So I had to.
So that's pressure.
Yeah, so I had to.
That's pressure.
And we had to get the 10% deposit to exchange, and that was done in 24 hours. So that was £30,000.
Yeah, this is the 30,000 you mentioned earlier in 24 hours. Okay, talk me through that process. What was your first initial thought when that person said, "We don't have the funds anymore"?
There was a lot of.
Ray, get ready with the bleeping button.
Yeah,
right. Children listening to this podcast. Yeah,
you're not going to need the bleeper, but yes, that was the thought. It was like, my word, what do I do now? Because I was already exposed for £250,000 on the other side of the plot that we'd bought.
Yeah.
So it was a matter of just getting on the phone and just ringing as many people as I could that I potentially could help me out. And one person said, "Have you tried this person?" I said, "No." He said, "Try her." So I tried her, and she said, "Yeah." And I had those funds. I had those funds within 24 hours.
So for the Americans that's listening to this on a sort of DEFCON scale, this has gone from irritated to slightly miffed.
Yeah, slightly miffed was the way, but I understand why the investor pulled out is because it took so long. So I don't hold any grudges. It was just, and since then, obviously, I've dealt with a lot of things. I understand that these things move around all the time. It was just a little bit of a kick.
But I think, Craig, also it shows. I mean, one of my questions for later on, but I'll bring it in now because I think it might be right. What one skill do you think the Navy taught you? Because I think this highlights something that you probably learned whilst in the Navy. But what skills would you say the Navy gave you?
If I was being serious, I would say tenacity and grinding, ability to take bad news, take hits, and sometimes you just backed into a corner and never giving up, fight your way out of it a little bit. Whereas a lot of people, and you get this a lot in the military. There's a lot of military people in the property circles or ex-military people, and they seem to have the same kind of just core. I'm not saying other people can't do it. It just seems to be something that's taught to us that maybe we don't expect. So the tenacity to get things done and the unwillingness to give up is another one. The second,
yeah, I mean, as you were talking through there. And you landed with this, no pun intended, but this bombshell, and saying you've got a finite amount of time. Yeah, a lot of people would have just crumbled at that point, and this is where they lose everything at that point. Whereas I think a couple of things. One, I'm thinking these are skills that you've learned. When things go wrong, you train for, okay, everything can go wrong, but this is what we do. This is the course of action. This is how you do it. And you kind of talking about it. I got on the phone all the time. And then the other thing that I thought was interesting was the power of the network and the fact that it was you talking to someone who then said, "Have you tried this person?"
Yeah.
No, I haven't. And they were the one. And that just highlights the power of the network, I think, in there. But before we finish this one, you said, when I asked what skill did the Navy give you, I said, well, if I'm being serious, I want to know, if you're not being serious, what skill did the Navy give you?
The second one is touch type into 50. So if I'm sending an angry email, it can go out really, really quick, 50 words a minute.
There we go.
And the other one was being able to be in the back of a taxi and not throw up when you really think you're going to throw up. That's an impressive skill as well. That's all built from foreign travels.
Yeah. That's strong stomach.
So
those seasick tablets.
You remember where you were when you got the bad news then?
Yeah, definitely. But like I said, that got done, and then
can I just touch back on that, because is there there was a time limit between when the investors said yes, agreed, and then when it came down to it, they said, "Oh, we haven't got the money anymore." Have you learned anything from that gap? Would you keep more in touch? Would you feed them much more information? I mean, we always have this idea of a follow-up Friday with investors. So every Friday noon, fire them out an email or something that tells them what's going on. If it's no news at all, just say nothing has changed or we're still moving on. What have you sort of learned from that to try and not make it happen again?
Yeah, I think you're actually answering your own question there. The answer is just communication is everything. And I've been good at this and I've been really bad at this as well. So I think with that person, and again, hold no grudges, it's just the way it is. And I didn't communicate enough with them to just make sure everything was on track, because I think I would have found out a little bit earlier. But the communication is everything, because what I found is if you don't communicate and people are left wondering, then they kind of make up their own story. And their own story, when their funds are deployed, are typically the worst case scenario, when it might not be that bad. And then when you do speak to them at certain points, they're like, I was thinking about recalling the loan because I thought it was in trouble and stuff. And you're like, no, everything's fine. So communication on both sides of the fence, making sure your funds are still there when you need them. And actually, once you've got the funds, make sure you're telling the investors all the time what's going on. And again, this is something I'm getting better at, because initially you just kind of, I'm not saying you become blasé, but you've got the money in the bank, you're doing your project, you're off doing your thing, and you kind of forget a little bit about the people that have helped you along the way and to keep them updated, because it's them that have invested in either the project or you, and you've got to make sure that they're still pleased with what's going on. And if they're not, you can identify it earlier and try and fix it.
Yeah, I mean, there's potentially a bit of an element in there that when you buy the house normally that you live in and you get a high street bank to give you the mortgage, you don't phone them up every Friday and say, I just thought I'd let you know that I'm having a good week at work and, things are good. And, I've just painted the dining room and things like that. And things are on track and the payment will be made. We don't do it. And maybe there's an element of that. Okay, we agreed that you'd lend the money. Now let me get on with it. Do I really have to tell people? And Ray, you talk about it all the time. I've heard people call it Update Friday, where they just get on the phone Friday mornings and just phone around people or email people and just say, here's where we're at. So from what you're talking about, some people, I'm guessing, want to know every day, and other people, once every 6 months will do. It's strange, but you now have a system, Craig, do you, where you consciously thinking, I need to make sure I'm updating people?
Yeah, and obviously, and as we know, Ray's been one of my mentors for years now, so Follow-Up Friday is a thing that we do as well. There's been a few investors that say I don't need to know every Friday because it's just a voice message saying, no, it's happened. But as long as you can kind of update them a little bit, again, there is a system in place. We do that.
No, that's good. Okay, so this dramatic turn of events, and you had to get the funding. That you overcame that hurdle. How did the project go? Were there any unexpected costs that you thought you'd planned for every eventuality, but things took a turn and you had to do something different?
I need to step in and say, tell us about the groundworks.
I was going to say start from the shovel going into the soil, but
it's been rough. It's been one of those where I'll look back on 10 years' time and cry. I'm not going to laugh about it because it's not funny at all. but it's been one of those.
But you're still here. You're still here.
Yeah, it was basically because
I don't say yes once more with conviction this time. You're still here, Craig.
Yes. And I'll always be here.
Thank you.
No, it was frustrating. We had a number of issues, and obviously going through the COVID part of it, and we had some contractors that kind of came and went, and things like the normal juggling. And we had development finance in place for this, and I spoke to them. And again, it's key to speak to your funders with regards to bank lending as well. So your development finance, again, I've learned those lessons, because what you can do is you think you can outsource pretty much everything, but you can't outsource responsibility. No matter what you do, it's your name on the legal documents. And I thought I'd given it to my project manager to kind of update them, and they weren't, and therefore they've fallen out of love with us or whatever. So, but we started the groundworks, and we'd done a few drawdown tranches of the dev finance. Everything was going okay. Because of COVID hit, we kind of overwent our loan facility, but we spoke to them and said, can we extend it? And they said, yes, but your interest rate's going to be slightly higher. And we was like, okay, these things happen. We'll deal with it. And then we said, right, we'll crack on. And then we went and did £163,000 worth of groundworks, which was covered. And the QS came down, the quantity surveyor came down and said, well, looking at the planning matrix on the old style, we're only going to release 35,000. And I was like, excuse me, what? So I spoke to the dev finance people and said, listen, the whole project's changed. We need to reevaluate this planning matrix. And they said, well, no, we're not going to give you the 163. So you've got to plug that gap, because I had ground workers then threatening, not criminal, well, I suppose it was criminal damage. They said they were going to cut all the metal poles off and take all my attenuation tanks out because they paid for them and I'd not been able to pay them back, which was going to cost me £100,000 in damages just to fix that problem as well. So I had 15 days. When the QS had come around, it was 12 days to raise 163,000, because the dev finance company said, well, in fact, we're not even going to pay you the 35,000 because now we don't have the appetite for the deal anymore. This is our time to exit. So we're now exiting as well. So then I had to find £400,000 for them to buy them out. And that had to be done in 21 days. And then I had to raise the finance for the rest of the build as well, which was another, God knows how much. It came to a total bill of £1.1 million. And I had to raise it within 3 weeks. But the first 163,000 had to be in 12 days. So that was...
At what point during this did you think, do you know what, ships are my thing, and maybe this property isn't for me?
Well, I'll be honest. So on this one, there was a few people I'd spoken to, and they said, so you've got investor funds in that? And I said, yeah. And they said the dev finance company have got step-in rights. If something's not going well, they can come in, take over the site, and they can sell it at whatever payment they want to make. So I had a investor in there on a second charge that was really, really vulnerable if they decided just to take a real big hit and just cover their costs. So I had some people, I mean, in business, and whatever way you think about it, they said to me, why don't you just let them step in and take over the site and just deal with it? And your investors have invested money, and it can go up and can go down, so they understand the risks. And I was like, something doesn't sit right with me for that. So I looked at what I had to do, and basically to cover my own costs, and there'll be a small profit potential at the end of it. But in order to protect my investors, I was having to go and sign PGs for £1.1 million, and I was having to build out the site. And even though people were telling me not to, it was like, well, I've got investors who are in there now. So what's better for me? Either I build out, I take the risk of doing that, but I protect my investors for another deal because I'm here for the next 10 years, or I pull out completely, let them deal with it, and then absolutely demolish my reputation and not be able to get where I want to go. So for the sake of, and it sounds stupid, but for the sake of borrowing £1.1 million, but it was more important to me, to my reputation I've been building over a number of years, to kind of work with that and think, right, this one's going to be a kick in the proverbials, but the next 2 or 3 deals, 4 deals, 5 deals will be a lot better. So that's what I did. We're building out. I borrowed the extra money, and my investors are protected. So it's just the way I thought that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. What did you explain that to your investors?
So there's an intermediary that I'm dealing with, and I've spoken to them, and they said they're happy for me to say who my investors were. There was a group of, there was a SAS pension fund, and they have some people on the periphery of it, and they was kind of working, and they said, we think we can do this for you, like a step in and bailouts mission. So I told them at the time, I was like, this is, and they asked me why I was borrowing the money, and I was like, this is why, because I've got a guy in there who's got £200,000 in this deal, and I can't let him lose it because I shouldn't. So when I took on the risk of borrowing his money, I then took on the responsibility for getting it back, which is something that's what I agreed to do, and that's the right thing to do. So yeah, that's just the way we did it. So I told him recently that that's why I'd done it. It seemed to go well enough, I suppose. They seemed happy about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, anyone that's willing to fight and maybe take the tougher path rather than the easy road for them personally, I think, as you say, is going to build a longer term credibility. And Ray, it's about time we talked about toothpaste and the Crest model. And the first one's always, credibility of somebody. And it may not always be the end result and the profit there, but the ability to try and protect the people that you have brought on board, I think is a very worthy sort of trait in there. So I'm sure the two of you had lots of conversations about this.
Yeah, I think to be honest, at the time I didn't have much conversation with Ray, because Ray I think tried to message me saying, "Are you okay?" Because I'm a bit of a talker. He said, "You've gone very, very quiet," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm having to swing at the minute, Ray. I'm having to fight my way out of this." And obviously, then I turned around and we've got a small WhatsApp group between us, and I posted a couple of videos in there to why I've been quiet recently. And yes, you can look around and say I raised £1.1 million in 21 days in total, but in a couple of tranches. But there was so many people that helped me do that. I didn't just ring up a person and said, "There's £1 million." There was so many cogs in that wheel, and it was people working round the clock in order to help me out. So it was.
There you go. Again, the power of your network, isn't it?
It is, and sometimes you don't even realize you're building a network until you're in the mire. And then all of a sudden you speak to somebody and they say, "Oh, have you spoken to this person?" But just because you're out there and you're doing it and you're showing people what you're doing and speaking to people constantly, and then, you don't realize sometimes that a lot of investors are secretly just watching you. Not in a stalkery kind of weird way. I mean, just paying attention to what you're achieving or what you're getting involved in. And then they can make their own mind up. Is that something I'd be prepared to get into or not? I was just really, really, really lucky. Really lucky. Well,
they say, the harder you practice, the luckier you get. So do you think, it was just a case of you were practicing having those conversations with investors, and you were practicing what you preach in terms of, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. So, you're trying to protect them because you would want them to protect you if it was reversed. So, the light at the end of the tunnel, Craig, tell me it's not a train coming the other way. It is daylight. You can see this now, can you?
Yeah. We like I said, all the buildings are sold. We've got them all taken money for them. We're hopefully we'll be out there by March, which if is good for the stamp duty, land tax, obviously, but at the time of recording this, but they might extend it. We never know. It might be extended when some people are actually listening to this.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And in the meantime, I've not just been sat on my hands doing nothing. I mean, I've got so many other things that are going on at the minute as well. So it's
give us a quick summary as to what else has been you've been doing. And
quick, come on, Ray.
Here we go. You've gone from being a sort of sole trader, and then you talked about your project manager, and you talked about others. So you've created a team. So. Yeah. You created a team, and then from that team you've started to reach out to other projects. So you had the one where you took the 2 bits of land together to build the 5 houses, and then you've extended out from there.
Yeah, so I was quite quick when I was starting my education. I don't know why I did that. It is education. When I started my education, it was a matter of there was lots of people concentrating on a single strategy, and I thought myself, I just took myself away and thought my strategy is not rent to SA or anything. My strategy is building a business, and in 7 years' time, I'm going to sell that business. That's my strategy. So what do I need? So I went away and thought, what are my weak points? And I basically got a board of directors together, sat around the table, and they're all shareholders as well in the company, because I wanted people to be invested in the company and pushing forward. And we've got 7 of us now who are on the board, and there's a variety of skills. We've got, I won't go into great detail, we've got people who buy land, we've got a commercial broker on the board, we've got my old mentor for my education. He's currently there, helps me out as my sounding board, or chief whinger, basically. I hope he gets to see this, but he is a bloody whinger. And we've got like a main contractor now that I've also, he won't complain about me saying the fact that his business was kind of going under, and I plugged some people in, and we've built his contracting company up now. So he's our main contractor as well. Well, he will be, unless he keeps putting his prices up, and then he won't be. But so we built that company, and now we can sit around there. And now the next phase of that company is to start professionalising and corporatising it. So we've got a goal of the middle of next year to hire a full-time MD. We've got our super solicitor that currently works with us, will be working for us. We'll be taking her on board full-time, because last year our legal bills alone were around about £72,000. And so it makes sense to have a full-time solicitor. And we're agreeing a deal where we take 20% of her work if she's working for somebody else as well. So we'll do well with that. And she's amazing. So she's coming on board. And yeah, we basically trying to just make it so in 7 years' time, we can just sell the company, and they said, here's our assets, here's our calculations for our turnover, our multipliers and everything. This is what our business is worth, and sell it. And then I'll have 6 months off, and then the younger ones of us will go again.
So
yeah, there's a plan.
Do you have a particular property strategy? Are you doing new builds? Are you doing commercial conversions? Or are you just seeing what opportunities are available?
No, we're pretty strict. We do developments, whether that be new builds or like barn conversions or things like that. We tend not to get into commercial conversions, purely because I'm based in Harrogate and it's a conservation area, and you can't do things under PD. Everything's got to be full planning. And they say that Rome wasn't built in a day. That's because of Harrogate Borough Council. It really was. I don't mind them knowing. It's their fault for everything. But so we don't tend to do commercial conversions. I like the idea of building a house and selling a house, building a house and selling a house. And if you've got 10, you can sell 6 of them. For me personally, with a commercial conversion, if you're doing 32 flats, you've got to finish all 32. You can't have contractors coming in up the elevator shafts and putting the roof on and stuff, and you've still got people trying to live in there. So for me, it's just line of least resistance is something I say a lot. It's just build one, sell one, job done. So we do that. We reinvest. So that's our chunky money, our capital side of the business. Then we've got where we buy to rent. So we've got a number of rentals at the minute as well that are generating good income. And we also buy portfolios. So we're currently in the process of buying 2 larger portfolios. We've just completed on 18 units in Harrogate. And we're now working with landlords, getting them great money, great investments for them. And we're literally just buying either their companies off them. The 18 we've just bought, we bought the company. What is it? I forget. I think it's 76 units over 2 portfolios that we're buying. We're doing that, working with the vendors and turning them into investors in their own projects, so they get 2 bites of the cherry. So
how are you raising the money?
Yeah.
We're both thinking the same things. How are you raising the money for those portfolio purchases?
So I've on my board, I've got a guy called Michael Primrose, who's my broker.
Yep, he featured on this podcast,
episode 8.
One of the early digit ones. Yeah.
So
he was just branching out, I think, at that point on his own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I've known Michael since he was at Pilot Fish, so right at the very beginning, and obviously he started on his own company and things, and we had a few discussions. We're good friends. Sometimes we're not. Sometimes we get a little bit stressed at each other, but most of the time, 95% of the time, we're good friends, and we basically give him all our brokering to do. So he goes and structures the deals in certain ways. It's then up to me to speak to the vendor, hopefully, if I can, without an agent being in the middle, because they just complicate things. They just make it really, really difficult. We actually pulled out of a recent purchase of 107 HMO rooms because of the agent, because the agent kept advising the vendor that he needed first charge. And it was like, what are you doing? There's no way. I think it was £8.5 million. And it was just the agent in the way. And he kept saying, you'll need first charge, on any money you left in. It was like, we can't have first charge. And anyway, so we couldn't do anything with that one. But anyway, so I forget where I was at now. So we structure the deal the best we can. We try and do it with as little money as upfront as possible. And then with the little money upfront, it's normally like stamp duty or application fees for the bridging, if we use bridging or something like that. It's a relatively small chunk of money. So we just use investors for that. And we'll say, can you go in, pay the upfront fees? Let's just say it's 150, 200,000 pounds or whatever. You'll get a good return on your money. You'll get a second charge behind the first lender. And when we refinance in 6 to 12 months, you'll get all your money back and your interest.
And is the aim to hold those as assets, or are you trying to flip them on and sell them off, break it up?
So it depends. The two that we're doing at the minute, one of them we're buying to hold. That's 50 apartments. And then the other one we'll probably chunk it up. We'll keep some, we'll sell some, just because the yields aren't great and we're buying them at a decent discount. So it would make sense, rather than go and do if I can go and make 400, 500,000 pound in profit by just a paperwork exercise, then I'll do it, rather than go and building 10 houses to do exactly the same, which is going to take me 18 months. So so we're chunking that portfolio up a little bit and selling some and keeping some. And then I'm going to be, because we're buying the freehold, I'm actually going to be on the other side of it, where I'm offering people rent to SA opportunities, and I'll be the landlord. So that'll be nice. So,
so it's all go. It's all go, isn't it? Interesting. And in terms of having yourself tied in with sort of one broker for your finance, do you find that are those discussions when you you mentioned you may just disagree on certain points with Michael there? Is that because of anything in particular, or is it just different ways of structuring it, or would you sometimes wish to go to other people? How does that work when you're using just one broker?
So I've been honest with Michael, and everything we do with regards to the business, because he's also a key part of our business as well. He's a shareholder in the business. We will always look for the best opportunities. So we've gone to other brokers, and Michael's fully aware, and he knows that we've gone to other brokers. Michael doesn't do mortgage stuff, so we use other people for our refinancing on the mortgage. But what we tend to find is the fact that people are either exactly the same on their fees, or they've gone to the same lenders, or they're just not as good in some of the terms. So it's like, well, if I've got somebody who's got access to the people that we want to work with again and again and again, and let's just say bridging companies or debt finance companies are exactly the same as investors, once you've built that kind of relationship with them, then they'll tend to put their hat in the ring and fund more things, because they say, oh yeah, we know this guy and we'll do it again with him, and things work well. So we have tried other brokers, but it works. Like adulterous. I might as well go back home to him, because he's got the good stuff.
Was it why have a burger when you've got steak or something? Did someone famous say? I don't know.
I'm not going to.
You're not going to comment on there. I think it was Ray that told me that.
And he's going to say, "You called me a steak."
Right. Okay. One of the things that I was thinking there is you've obviously built up, as you say, this team, number of people that you've worked with, a number of times. How would your investors describe you, do you reckon, Craig?
I don't know, to be honest. I hope they would say, I don't know, honest, I think, is the way. That's all I want to be seen as, is just honest. And sometimes things don't go to plan, and sometimes investors' money are in there longer than you anticipate. But as long as they can say, I know it's having a bit of a hard time at the minute, but I know he'll get it done. Again, tenacious. It will happen. He'll fix it. It might not be today or tomorrow. That's all I want. That's it.
Well, that's interesting, because on the line we have your investors. No.
Next up, Cilla Black with surprise. We have one of your investors. I think of the same.
Yeah, he stood with two big blokes in black trench coats carrying shotguns. Is that an issue? No, that's interesting. I mean, again, when you're talking about your team and the financing things, I just want to throw in something that I've noticed. I think, Ray, when we've had conversations, you've noticed as well, which is during this pandemic and everyone working from home, have you noticed a difference in customer service from professional services, be it banks, solicitors, accountants or whatever, people working from home? Have you noticed the difference in customer service?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. There is no customer service. Yeah. You know, you're involved in a lot of things, probably a much higher level than a lot of people maybe listening to the podcast. And it does annoy me when I see people on TV talking about how productivity's gone through the roof with people working from home, and working from home is not an issue, because that's not the experience I've had. And Craig, would you say getting answers from people or the flow of work, is it improved or worsened?
I think one thing I will always sum up property in general, and I will answer your question, Nigel, but you just won't be straight away. So I've always said that the most infuriating thing with property is, yes, I'm one of those people, and other people are, they just want to get things done, and they will work really, really hard to get things done. But when you're in property, what you've got to realise is you will get things done on other people's timeframes, not yours. No matter how hard you push, you will be down to the solicitor, you will be down to your contractor, you will be down to the person who's dealing with the first class post from the bridger or something like that. It will be on everybody else's time frame, and maybe people have meetings, and the meeting will be next Tuesday, but you've got to have the funds in by today or tomorrow. So that's the most infuriating thing. And then when the pandemic kicked in and everybody went home, it just seemed to be everybody's. I know there was challenges with offices and remoting the offices and things like that, but at the end of the day, it's still a phone line and it's still answerable, and you can still do stuff on your computer. It's not rocket science or rocket surgery, as the people say. It just seemed to me to be an excuse for people just to go, oh, I'll do it next week. And it was no matter what, and it was solicitors, it was all sorts. And like I said, we've got a super solicitor at the minute, and she was having challenges with her company she works for, because again, she's amazing, but not everybody else is. So when you need things like independent legal advice, and it's another solicitor that you have to go to, then that was taking forever. And you're like, why is this a thing? So yeah, it just seemed to be an excuse for everybody, as far as I could see. And it's still there now, even though everything's surveyors, it's coronavirus. Why? You've got to get in your car and go and look at a building and then come back. That's all you've got to do. The coronavirus isn't chasing you down the street or anything. So it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. We had a down val on 5 units we bought. We bought them for £97,000 each in bulk. We bought 5 of them, new builds, straight off the home builder. They were valued at 122, and we bought them for 97 each. Great, good bit of business. We bought them on a bridge and we were refinancing them. And even though there was comparables, and this was in August, there were comparables in the area selling at the time for 120, 120, 121, 120. He said 97. It's like, how and why? Oh, coronavirus. But I mean, we laugh, but then you realise that now, because we're going through from a bridge into a mortgage, we're now doing things where we're going, now we've got to find a different lender that doesn't use the same surveyor on their panel, because they won't rewrite it and they won't admit that they're wrong. So now where we had 7 or 8 mortgage brokers we could go to, mortgage people we could go to, we've now got 2. And then you've got to start all the anti-money laundering stuff again, and the conveyancing for 12 weeks, all because one guy couldn't be bothered because coronavirus had meant that the houses that we bought were £25,000 cheaper than the ones that were selling at that time.
Yeah.
And that has a knock-on effect, because you sat on a bridge then for another 3 months and you're having to extend your bridge, and it's costing you £2,000 a month to service that debt, and it's just infuriating.
Ooh, been there. I've been there. Yeah, been there. And on the revals, the down valuations, we've even had 3 different valuations from the same person when nothing has changed. So You know, I don't understand it. I think there's an element of arse covering in there that's got to be that they're worried about their professional indemnity insurance and their professional advice and all the rest of it, and they're just going super cautious. Yeah, that's fine. But the thing that I've found is solicitors, accountants, finance people, they don't care. In my opinion, they don't seem to care about you as a customer and the long-term effects of them twiddling their thumbs and not doing anything. And as you say, that it's deeply frustrating when you are not in control of certain elements of something, and you are, as you said, you know, you're playing along to their timetable, and there's not a lot of pressure. There's not a lot of leverage that you can put on these people. So I think
the knock-on effect is the hardest thing to deal with, because they don't seem to understand the implications of a delay. You know,
no, and
it has a consequence, usually a financial consequence.
Absolutely, and you could extrapolate it a bit further and say, well, if we got the valuations and we could do this, we could add another person to the team. We could have another person here as a contractor. You could have employed another couple of people. You could have helped the economy move forward. But because of delays, things are just lost, and it disappears into the ether, these sort of things. So I think it has bigger ramifications for the actual economy in terms of being able to grow things and get it out of this mess. Because a quick question, Craig.
Yeah.
On a lot of your things here, you may well be potentially in the position for capital gains. What are your thoughts on the proposals for taxing that at 228,000% or whatever the government are proposing?
I absolutely love it, obviously.
There we are. Thank you very much. You said you talked it straight. You know, you're absolutely right.
No, it's just, I mean, for me, every challenge that comes up, it just means that the business that I'm in at the minute, and like I've said, my business strategy is to build a business and sell it. I quickly realized that I was building a business. So for me personally, it just makes it more professional, and it just means that there's a lot of people who are dabbling in there. It's just another kind of hurdle for them to get into. So it just means more opportunity if we do it right and we have the right tax advice and we go and speak to the right people and we pay their bills and things like that. It is what it is. And I know there's things like Section 24, and there's been stamp duty things that have changed, and every kick that an investor or a developer can have along the way, they're not on. You can still get over them. You can still do it as long as you plan long enough into the future and say, right, I'm not going to make £1 million a day like it was promised right at the beginning, but I might be able to in 4 or 5 years' time. So my new time frame is 4 or 5 years' time. That's when I'm going to make it. And you just keep working towards that and overcoming hurdles and challenges along the way. Again, the grit, the determination, and just see what happens and just take advice. And that's why I've got a team around me. I don't make all my decisions on my own. And it's sometimes, like I said, pulling out of a deal is sometimes the best thing you can do. So you don't have to go and throw your hat into every single ring out there. And sometimes saying no saves you more money than you would realise.
No, interesting, great philosophy.
Well, on that bombshell, that's one way to raise money or to save money, is not to do the deal. Look for the better deal. But it goes to show that even in these sort of troubled times, there is still, I mean, the same amount of money is still out there. It's just going to different places. You know, yeah. I had conversations in the last few days with people in different businesses, and you know, their businesses are expanding. You know, the construction sector is very, very busy. I was talking to a builder yesterday. He's just completely snowed under with work. A company that we were instrumental in funding about 5 or 6 years ago, which does garden furniture, and now has an 18-month waiting list. Just, you know, gone absolutely ballistic. There's just, so, you know, there still is money out there. People that have got money sitting in their bank accounts getting nothing for it are actively looking. Hopefully, Craig, they will look to you. So anyone that's listening to this podcast that's impressed and says, I like the cut of that guy's jib, how do they get in touch with you?
Just a simple email. It's just craig@cceoproperty.com. So Charlie Echo Oscar property.com. That's my email address. That's the easiest way to do it.
That's it. Simple. Charlie.
Excellent.
Brilliant. Okay. All right. I think we've come to the end of this particular podcast. Thank you very much, Craig, for talking us through your journey. We hope to have you on again, maybe in a year.
Yeah, let's get an update. Yeah, let's see how things pan out. Be good to have you back, and also it'd be interesting to talk to some of your maybe your team, get some thoughts from your team on that. So maybe we do one of those Zooms where there's about 300 people on a screen and you pretend you're looking at people. But it'd be interesting to get, their take on it as well. But Craig, thank you very much for your time.
Not a problem at all. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right.
Take care.
Cool.
Well, Ray, I thought that was fascinating, talking to Craig there, some of the things that he's had to meet. I made a few notes down here, some of the lessons that I got from it that hopefully the listeners got. What did you think there?
Yeah,
it's straightforward, isn't it?
Well, there was a lot of things Craig didn't say because it is tough. There's some good things and bad things, but we're in difficult times, and difficult times, interesting times call for difficult and interesting, innovative ways of doing things. And Craig's a perfect example of someone who just pulls their socks up and gets on with it. And doesn't complain. We had a lot of phone calls late at night, a lot of trauma and all the rest of it. And I think to some small extent helped him out a little bit there, but he's got a great network. He's got a great team behind him. So when you think about the CREST model, the credibility is there, the credibility is there. He's given people a decent return. He's got the exit sorted out because he's got the properties paid for. And in March, they're all going to be sold. The investors' money is secure. And not only do they trust him, but they'll trust him even more going forward. So
I mean, certainly a few things that I took from there that I think people should make note of. And just to recap, one, he said, put it down on paper. Conversations are great, but put it on paper. I thought that was very powerful. Just as a reminder, because sometimes these deals, someone will lend you money very easily, but just put it on paper. Mm-hmm. The changes over time in the service level and the ability to borrow. So always plan for a little bit more time to do things. The power of the network and his network and other people's networks. That's really, he kept talking about mentoring and other people he's with that he's used and asking for advice. I thought that was incredibly powerful. The other one that I thought was he sometimes delegated responsibility, but he said, you've got to remember it's yours and always will be. And sometimes it wasn't a delegation, it's maybe an abdication of that responsibility. So just be careful. I thought it was interesting there. Just be careful what you are hoping other people are doing. You've got to keep on top of it. You've got to keep checking it. Communication, keep people updated. I think some of the issues or the investor sort of querying that he alluded to was perhaps because he just didn't appreciate how much communication they expected or wanted. So he definitely upped it on that. But then, he described himself as having that kinetic energy, that sort of person. And I see it in you, and I see it in a number of other people who've got a military background. And I'm curious, what is it that he's taught in the military about that? Get up, keep going, pick yourself up, dust yourself down, keep going. You're not out of the fight, keep going. You're not out of it until we tell you you're out of it, sort of thing. How do you get that across to other people who haven't been through the military service? How do you do that?
Interesting one. I think that would be a whole other podcast. One of the other interview guests we're going to have is also some ex-military in a similar position. So we'll be speaking to them hopefully in the next week or so. Maybe that's a question to ask them, see what they think.
Yeah. But I thought it was great. I thought it was a real insight on that particular project. And I don't want that to kind of overshadow everything else that he's doing, which, as you heard, was some really big stuff there. And in a short space of time, he's got himself into, as he says, a proper corporate business structure. And he's taking things very seriously. So that's a powerful thing. But it is interesting. And when he talked about valuations, when he talked about delays on solicitors,
Oh yeah.
I was kind of looking at you, and I was thinking, yeah, we know that one.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there you go. No, that was great.
Okay.
Enjoyed that. I hope everyone else did. If you need to get in touch with us, Ray, where's the best place to get in touch with us?
Well, you can get in touch with us on Twitter or on Facebook. You can go to the How to Raise Money website, which Nigel is currently revamping.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a separate one. So we've got two. We're gonna have two, I think, for a bit. But we'd love to get a review. We'd love to get a review. I must admit, I haven't checked out the reviews to pick any up. But if you go in there, subscribe, give us a review, we'll give you a shout out on a future episode. But Ray, I've enjoyed it. That's been good.
It has been good. It was great. And we need to say thank you to Maria in Glasgow for the reminder. She said, you haven't done a podcast for ages. Come on. So
yes,
thank you, Maria.
I know. Isn't that wonderful when your listeners actually get in touch and tell you off for not doing enough episodes? I love it. Maria, thank you so much. Yeah.
And we also, there's two actually. There was a Maria.
Oh yeah.
And there was a Nancy. So
Nancy as well.
Nancy contacted me, both from Glasgow, contacted me and sent an email and sent, I think it was a Facebook direct message as well. So yes, Nancy and Maria, thank you both for the reminder.
Thank you very much.
And anyone else who's thought about reminding us, going, I wonder what's happened to these guys. Well, we're back. Yeah. we haven't actually been away. We haven't actually been away. We've just had a lot of things on. And obviously with not having decent broadband, it's been very difficult because we normally do these things sat side by side in the car, don't we, Nigel?
Yeah. That's normally the only time my car gets cleaned. You spot the dust and run your finger along it.
I do, that's correct. Yeah. Okay, well, on that dusty bombshell.
Right, thank you very much. I'm still Nigel T. Best, and
I'm still Ray McLennan.
All right, we'll see you soon, folks. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the How to Raise Money podcast. It's made for people who want to raise money as debt or investment equity for their business or property proposal or empire. The website has all the useful links and underlying research, and you can get downloads of the checklists and other useful information. See you next time, where we can show you how to raise money. There is abundance. There is money enough for everyone on the planet. The question is, who has yours?